James Bond is one of the greatest and most controversial film franchises of all time. So today, I'm ranking all 25 official James Bond movies. '25, Die Another Day. This was a very obvious last place for me, and I think it really does deserve to be right at the bottom of the barrel because it's the Bond film which truly does feel like a slap in the face, and between it looking like a late 90s video game with PS2 looking graphics, the appalling screenplay, and the just generally stupid decisions that the characters make throughout, it sets up a very frustrating experience for a viewer. I mean, Madonna's theme song just still terrorises me at night. It gives me nightmares. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night sweating, stressing out, and Madonna's theme song is playing. It is not fun. You could make a 30-minute video describing absolutely everything wrong with Die Another Day, and it still wouldn't be enough time. 24, For Your Eyes Only. What does it say about Roger Moore's other Bond films that this one, the one where he punches out an entire hockey team in full pads, fights a man in a robotic scuba suit at the bottom of the ocean, and gets into a ski chase with a motorcycle on a bobsled track? This is considered his serious one, the most serious Roger Moore Bond outing. I mean, the first 30 minutes of the film are fine. I think they're fine. But the film turns very unfunny very quickly. I think between the terrible screenplay once again, the snarky humour which really doesn't work, and an age in Roger Moore, it makes out for one of the worst James Bond films. 23, Octopussy. And with a title that would never be used in modern day cinema, Octopussy is a film with no real narrative really, and things do happen to Bond, but they don't build upon each other. Nothing really makes sense, especially towards the end of the film. But if you do take a look at the production history of Octopussy when it was made, it's no mystery as to why it's one of the most uninspiring Bond films. But I do love it how Bond is desperate to stop a nuclear bomb from exploding, and he then takes 25 minutes to put on full clown makeup as a disguise. 22, Quantum of Solace. Quantum of Solace really does feel like an epilogue to Casino Royale. It's almost like a free DLC that you could have found in the Casino Royale DVD box, and you would use it as a coaster. That's what it feels like. It is a cheap, made-for-TV epilogue to Casino Royale. And it was rushed into production, very, very much so. It was incredibly fast-tracked, and the writer's strike did have a huge effect on the film. I mean, Mark Foster, the director, and Daniel Craig were actually making up their own lines on set, and they've admitted to that. 21, Diamonds Are Forever. And after On Her Majesty's Secret Service failed at the box office, Sean Connery was shifted and given a big old bag to come out of retirement. I believe he was paid a record $1.25 million to return as Bond for one last time. And not only does Connery look it, but the film, again, is very tiring in every sense. And I feel the same way about Diamonds Are Forever as I do about the late Roger Moore films, in that Connery and Roger Moore in their early films are very believable, especially in the fight scenes and action sequences. But as you can see them age film by film, it becomes very uninspiring and almost hard to watch. It's like watching someone's grandpa. And whilst Diamonds Are Forever does have a fantastic theme song from Shirley Bassey and a few solid set pieces, it's redeeming, but not enough to save the film. 20, Spectre. Spectre is uninteresting, it's uneventful, uninspiring, with an underused villain in Christoph Waltz, and some of the set pieces are gorgeous by Sam Mendes. You can tell he's actually sat behind the camera, and again, Roger Deakins is a fantastic cameraman, and some of the shots in this film and cinematography are stunning. Even then, I do believe Spectre shoots itself in the foot due to the fact that the action sequences are just very long and drawn out for their own good. The scene with Dave Bautista as the henchman is the best in the film, and he says one word. I just don't have any fun with Spectre. It's very boring, it's way too long as I've mentioned. Oh, and that whole Long Lost Brothers storyline was the final straw for me. 19, A View to a Kill. A View to a Kill was Roger Moore's final outing as Bond, and it does feel like it too. I wouldn't say it's a boring Bond film, but it's very uncompelling. And the Bond girl played by Tanya Roberts, she plays a great part in the role, but Roger Moore is well past his prime in this, and you can tell. But I would say that Christopher Walken and Grace Jones are very enjoyable villains, and the entire third act, Golden Gate Bridge sequence, makes it worth watching. A View to a Kill has many redeeming aspects, but the first 60 minutes of the film just drag it down for me, and Roger Moore can be kind of hard to watch sometimes. Also, John Barry, a name you'll hear a few times, his score is fantastic in this. 18. Moonraker. Moonraker was just shoved onto a production fast track after the success of George Lucas's Star Wars in 1977. It's very interesting to see how this film has aged due to the fact that the set design, the music, and some of the set pieces are actually incredibly great, and it's surprising how well they've held up. And whilst yes, it does feel like a parody film at times, I think this is one of the Roger Moore films which has aged incredibly well. And we all know that Moonraker has its problems, it's got a big fair share of them, but from the set design to the special effects and the music in Moonraker, James Bond in space isn't as bad as it sounds. 17. Tomorrow Never Dies. Tomorrow Never Dies was the highly anticipated sequel to Goldeneye, and whilst I wasn't alive at the time, Tomorrow Never Dies was a Bond film which I adored as a child. It was probably within my top 5 or 6, and I always thought it was very rewatchable, and I just always had a lot of fun with it. I'd watch it on VHS all the time, nearly used out the tape, but I have a lot of great memories of watching Tomorrow Never Dies as a child. But upon my last rewatch, I was severely disappointed with how poorly this held up. Jonathan Pryce's villain was very over the top, and his performance just doesn't work too well. You can also see that the film tries to go for that late Roger Moore era, but it just doesn't quite work. I think it's a very mid-range Bond film, and it has a solid performance from Brosnan, and the Bond girl, Michelle Yeoh, she works surprisingly well. 16. You Only Live Twice. You Only Live Twice is a very different Bond film to the first 4 Connery films, and whilst it is more of a spectacle with an increased budget, it really does struggle to compare to those first 4 iconic Connery films. I'm sure people have heard about this, but it's very safe to say that the film hasn't aged well. I mean, Bond literally had surgery to become Japanese for a few scenes. Blofeld's volcano lair has always remained one of the greatest Bond sets to this day, and whilst Connery does seem slightly less interested than the prior Bond films, him and Donald Pleasance make the film more than watchable. 15. The World Is Not Enough. The World Is Not Enough, it's one of those better than the sum of its parts movies. I don't think it's as bad as the rep that it gets from a lot of Bond fans, and there's a lot of stupid and clunky, with plenty of cheese scenes throughout this, but it does work on a whole for me. And I think there's some really great action set pieces. Brosnan, once again, is a great 007. Brosnan is a great 007, I mean, as he is in all of his films, and Sophie Marceau is wickedly fun as Electra King. 14. The Man with the Golden Gun. The Man with the Golden Gun definitely has a place in my heart. It's actually one of the first Bond films which I ever watched, so I do remember the entire film very fondly. It's much sillier and less badass than the previous Connery film, but Christopher Lee is absolutely iconic in this film, and his reaction to when James Bond shows up on his island is just so unique. He's extremely memorable, and I think he's one of my favourite Bond villains in the entire franchise. I also think the use of the Golden Gun is very clever, and it just works well. And The Man with the Golden Gun just has a brilliant theme song, and it's got everything I want to see from a Bond film. Is it perfect? No, but it's also a lot of fun, and I think it's an iconic Bond. 13. Dr. No. Dr. No is certainly a product of its time. It's a fun time capsule with some great sets and a truly exceptional performance from Sean Connery. It's what started the entire franchise, and he alone instantly makes James Bond iconic from the moment we actually set our eyes upon him. And I think within recent years, Dr. No has a reputation for being very, very slow, and whilst it does have longer, drawn-out scenes, I don't think it's a snooze fest or a completely boring film like a lot of people make out. I understand that Bond is never truly, really in a lot of danger, but between the score, the casino introduction, the fantastic clothing, cars, women, and everything that makes a great James Bond film, there's so much to love within Dr. No. 12. Live and Let Die. And in what was Roger Moore's very first outing as 007, Live and Let Die is right up there with his very strongest. It's a surreal Bond film with a load of bizarre scenes and moments that almost don't feel right when you're actually rewatching the film. Every time I watch Live and Let Die, I'm kind of thinking, wow, I completely forgot about these aspects of the film. But with a great black exploitation storyline and some of the most fun and wacky characters in the entire franchise, Live and Let Die is one of the most memorable Bond films for me. The action sequences are fantastic, and I mean, I suppose you can't really talk about Live and Let Die without mentioning Paul McCartney's iconic song. This was just such an interesting twist for a Bond film for me, and it works in every sense. 11. The Living Daylights. In what feels like a huge breath of fresh air when actually watching the Bond films in order, Timothy Dalton takes over the mantle from Roger Moore in a much needed switch from Moore's comedic approach to Dalton's much more hard-edged, straightforward Bond. And with some of the best action in the entire franchise up to this point, The Living Daylights turns into a rougher, Cold War thriller, which actually feels like the first Bond in a good few years to have a real, impactful story. And whilst it does have some weaker and sillier parts throughout the film, Timothy Dalton and director John Glenn successfully reinvented the series with this one. 10. Thunderball. Thunderball lives much further up this list than where a lot of people would place it. To me, Thunderball has truly always been a fantastic Bond adventure with a prime Sean Connery. The film is flawed, it is. Like every Bond film to an extent, it is flawed, but between the entire third act, the fantastic locations, kind of the same things that Dr. No represents, I've always had an epiphany for Thunderball. It's absolutely fantastic. It does also have a wackiness to it, and a real playful feeling around the film and the action sequences. I just think it works so well. It's a film that I love to stick on during the summer months, and like I said, everything about Dr. No is here too. It's peak Sean Connery, as I mentioned, and I just love it. 9. The Spy Who Loved Me. When viewing The Spy Who Loved Me, once you get to the opening credits, you know you are truly in for a different type of Bond adventure with Roger Moore. The entire film it's peak Roger Moore, and it's Roger Moore at his very best. And to me, The Spy Who Loved Me is a mile above every other Roger Moore film in the series. What Brosnan did with Goldeneye, I truly believe Moore did with The Spy Who Loved Me. I just think The Spy Who Loved Me has it all as a classic Bond film, and it's complete without feeling like a parody. It doesn't take itself too seriously at the same time, and it features so many fantastic scenes. I mean, the epic Egypt light show, the scene with Jaws appearing in the closet on the train, and the final fight, the submarine hangar. It's fantastic, and thanks to the director of photography, Claude Renoir, it's a beautiful film to look at. 8. No Time to Die. The latest Bond film to be released is about as controversial as you would expect, but No Time to Die to me has always worked very well as Craig's final Bond film, and the main talking point, obviously straight into it, is the third act and the final scene. James Bond does in fact die. I don't think it actually works quite as well as I thought when I saw it in cinemas, but it still does work. It still holds up fairly well. I have gone back and forth, and I'm not going to lie, between whether I like it, whether I don't. I would say I'm fine with it. I think they pulled it off for me. I know a lot of people hate the idea of what happened, but I do think it's fine. I think it worked just about okay for me. But the entire film probably runs about 15 to 20 minutes too long. But between the grand and epic, huge opening sequence in Matera, the film just has a class to it. It's shot fantastically by Linus Sandgreen, and I believe it's one of the best looking and sounding Bond films from a production standpoint. I do believe during the second act the film goes a little bit off the rails and there's a few plot points that don't quite land for me, but overall No Time to Die is a successful end to the Craig era. 7. On Her Majesty's Secret Service. On Her Majesty's Secret Service sees George Lazenby take up the mantle of James Bond. He injects just about enough humour and fourth wall breaking to give the film a nice bit of self-awareness. He does wonderfully as Bond. And this is a Bond film which has grown on me significantly throughout the years, pretty much with every single rewatch. As a child, this probably wouldn't have even broken my top 10 or 15. I thought it was far too long. I didn't really understand the romance and the actual danger and threat that they were in towards the end of the film. And rewatching it now, you just feel so much tension from the second to the third act all the way throughout with what is a fantastic and really dramatic ending that doesn't really feel like any other Bond film. Recasting Blofeld was a bold decision, but I think it works. Given Donald Pleasance's iconic performance, it was a risk, but Telly Savalas brings a real redefined tone to the supervillain. It works really well for this Bond. 6. License to Kill. License to Kill is one of my favourite Bond films of all time. It shook off the Moore era humour and went for something far more violent, realistic. It's a wild film with tons of sharks, drugs, explosions, absurd stunts, and of course Timothy Dalton plays Bond very, very well. And director John Glenn returns from The Living Daylights and keeps the pacing and the action throughout the film very clear and purposeful. I love the idea and the premise of this, that Bond just goes solo, and it's just so badass. Honestly, it works so well regarding a drug cartel, and there's a twist or two throughout the film. It still looks glorious on a big screen, and it's just such an explosive, loud Bond film, and it feels like such a fantastic watch when you're watching the Bond films throughout the series in order, and I love License to Kill. 5. From Russia with Love. From Russia with Love is truly a quintessential Bond film, and it always surprises me when watching the entire franchise in order how you get to the second film and it already feels like Bond in his full flow state. We have Sean Connery here, who is just, again, even better than Thunderball. He's in his prime in this. This is prime Sean Connery in the 60s, and it's a quintessential Bond film. I mean, just from the opening sequence where you actually see projected onto the bodies, you just know it's slightly different than Dr. No. It's slightly darker, it's got more of an espionage theme to it. It's just a really fun ride all the way through. It feels like peak Bond, and it deserves to be in the top 5. 4. Goldfinger. Released just 1 year after From Russia with Love. It's actually quite crazy to think that within 12 months you would have witnessed From Russia with Love and Goldfinger in cinemas. It's baffling. Goldfinger is probably the most definitive classic James Bond film for me, and all the tropes are just, they're in full flow, and they're taken to the highest level. It's campier, the puns are more free-flowing, the musical component of the film I think is much better than From Russia with Love. Obviously, the fantastic Shirley Bassey theme. It's iconic. It is, if not the greatest, very much up there as one of the greatest James Bond themes of all time, and just an absolutely fantastic song. 3. Goldeneye. Goldeneye is a truly flawless James Bond film, and it is so hard to actually decide between these top 3. It's incredibly tough, but I truly feel like Goldeneye for me, and I was thinking this the other day, it feels like what would a Bond movie look like if it was directed by John McTiernan, who's obviously made Die Hard, Predator, and many great, fantastic action films over the years. If you watch Goldeneye, it does feel like it's just a flawless, perfect 90s action movie, which just so happens to be a James Bond film. I think Goldeneye possibly has the greatest cast ensemble in the entire franchise. I think the cast just works so well. Pierce Brosnan, again, he's got an absolute aura, and I've said that word once or twice, but he's got an aura around him in this particular film. And just after rewatching this the other week, it really blows me away how great Pierce Brosnan actually is with his portrayal of James Bond in this. I love Connery, I like Moore, Lazenby is great, and Timothy Dalton does a really great job, but Pierce Brosnan's portrayal it truly blows me away. I think he understood the Fleming character so perfectly. Famke Jensen is so damn, good looking, but she's great as Xenia on a top. Oh, she's just perfect in this film, and she's a character which I really would have liked to have seen more of. She works so well, and her dynamic with Pierce Brosnan and Bond it's flawless. It's absolutely perfect, and I think it's part of what made this film. It feels like a level above everything which has come prior to this. It truly feels like a huge 90s blockbuster in a James Bond skin. 2. Skyfall. Directed by Sam Mendes, Skyfall is the greatest looking and sounding film in the entire franchise. It's so grand. You've got this huge, incredible scope, and it feels like a large film. Roger Deakins, it feels like he's painting the frames with a paintbrush. You cannot imagine another 007 playing Bond in Skyfall. It's just, Daniel Craig works it absolutely perfectly. And I love his performance. He almost has more of a human aspect to his portrayal in comparison to Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. I think it works perfectly. And we have to mention the villain, Javier Bardem. He proved that his performance in No Country for Old Men wasn't a fluke, and backed it up here. He created a really immersive and memorable villain which, it feels creepy. Just creates these moments out of thin air that have become iconic over the years. I think the whole film has just aged perfectly. Bardem played this really flamboyant and he put a twist on a Bond villain, and it works so well. The scenes between Craig and Bardem, they're almost enchanting. You can't look away when you're watching it. I love the set pieces in this film, from the opening sequence where Bond is shot and we see Bond just at the bottom. He's failed essentially, and it's a comeback film. It's an entire comeback, and it almost feels like a revenge film for Bond, leading into the fantastic, I guess you could say, Home Alone-esque third act, which I think it works so well. The landscape and the scenery in Scotland is just, it's iconic, and it's what I love about Bond, and it very much so could be my number one. Number one, Casino Royale. Martin Campbell once again saved the Bond franchise. He previously directed Goldeneye 1995. He returns in 2006, reinvents and essentially rebooted the James Bond franchise with Casino Royale. Daniel Craig brings a gritty intensity to Bond. It's very different from anything we've ever seen previously. Casino Royale works on so many different levels for me, and I think I see the film quite deeply. It's almost about a man who's been systematically broken down into a murdering tool. For the first time in a very long time, learns to feel again just in time his heart to be broken. And between it all, you have the fantastic Eva Green. She's flawless. She's my favourite Bond girl of all time, and the dynamic between her and Bond is just, it's timeless. And Casino Royale, for me, it gets better with every watch. And you can't mention the film without mentioning Mads Mikkelsen as Le Chiffre. I think he's a genius in this film. No other versions could have worked, where you have this harrowing sort of cruel villain. And one thing that I do love in particular about Casino Royale is the actual speed and the sharpness of the editing. The film just flows perfectly. And it does actually have quite a bit of a longer runtime for a Bond film. You cannot feel it at all. And now this film, it does get some complaints regarding the third act, and the fact that people think the film, it drags on a little bit towards the end and the third act feels unnecessary. People say the film peaks a little bit too early towards the middle, but I completely disagree. I think it shows what Bond finds important, and you have this grand climax in Italy with Eva Green. It's heartbreaking. It's essentially the origin story for Bond. Obviously, you lead into that final iconic scene with Bond announcing himself. To me, it's an origin story. And I can't believe it's actually taken me this long to mention You Know My Name, which is, I'm going to say it, it's my favourite song of all time. It's written and performed by Chris Cornell, and when you watch this film, during the opening sequence, you hear the guitar ripping, and the theme song, You Know My Name, gives me goosebumps. I feel like I'm in heaven every time I'm listening to it. It's got a real sort of, almost feels like a double-edged sword. You could almost see it as a really positive or dark song. It fits the film so perfectly. Not only this, but the ensemble characters and cast just work so well. Jeffrey Wright in this film is so great. He's got so many iconic lines that have aged perfectly, like I'm bleeding chips, or there's just so many great supporting cast performances throughout. And for that reason, and many more which I could talk about all day long, Casino Royale is my number one and my favourite James Bond film of all time. Thank you very much for watching this video. This was my complete ranking of all the official James Bond films. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like the video and subscribe for more content coming very soon. So, with that said, how do you guys rank the James Bond franchise? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Tell me your ranking down below in the comments section. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.